path. You've got Yahoo and Microsoft and eBay on your side. I mean, I noticed that the head of eBay sent an email to millions of customers alerting them to the dangers of the two-tier network.
Well, they're Johnny-come-latelys, frankly. I mean, we were doing this 5 or 6 years before they arrived. But they've discovered that if you give the power of gatekeeping to the owners of the wires, just like way back 100 years ago, the owners of the railroads had the power of gatekeeping, it really does undermine our dynamic economy.
But let me step over to your opponent's side for a moment. They say the very idea of network neutrality is really a, quote, cynical ruse, a ploy by some well-heeled internet companies to lock in their market share with the government's help and shift all the cost of transmitting this heavy content entirely to the consumer.
Well, in fact, consumers have been paying for the telephone network, the communications network. The key answer is that when I pay for the network, when I buy service, the one fundamental principle has been is that I decide what I can have. The recent guys who come along and say they want to charge Google or eBay for using the network. They already pay a little bit to connect up to it. But I'm the guy who's actually using the network.
The consumer.
The consumer. When I go out to Google's site and I say, hey, click this, who's using that network? I'm the one who's decided what to download. And I paid for the service, and if they want to set up a category for really high-speed stuff and say, Cooper, you have to pay a little bit more for this in order to get the high-speed stuff, that's fine with me. And we actually have that already. They mislead you about that. That system already exists. Some people have dial-up, some people have DSL, some people can get a T1 line, they call it. But the key thing is that once I pay for that service, they don't get the opportunity to say, Google's stuff goes, but eBay's doesn't. And that's exactly what they want.
The telephone companies in particular, Mark, say that the fees they want will be used to build more capacity. Here's what the head of AT&T told Congress, quote, you cannot expect any company, my company or anyone else's, to pour in these billions of dollars that are required to build infrastructure without some return.
And they've been recouping the cost by charging the customer. That's the key thing, is that I will pay a fair price for their network as long as I get to determine what services I can access. They want to change that. They want to charge me for part of the network, and then they want to go out to Google or eBay and say, look, I'll make a special deal with you. I'll let your bits go in this fast lane, but you know what? I'll give you an exclusive deal on that fast lane. And they won't let other people compete for the fast lane. So they become a gatekeeper. Now they get to decide who's going to succeed? Because let's be clear, if one guy has access to the consumer at a high-speed rate and his competitor does not, eventually the competitors will disappear. And so what they're doing is strangling competition at the level of applications like Google or content. And in exchange for building the pipes, that's a bad deal.
Congress left town last month without settling the issue. What's the next round in this fight?
Well, you know, the Congress left town without settling, but they didn't pass a lot of money bills either. So they went home to try and get reelected, and now they're threatening to come back in a lame duck session, in which one suspects that a bunch of them might not even be coming back, right? So it's going to be a really lame duck. But these lame duck sessions are really dangerous because what happens is I have to pass a few money bills, and what people will now say is, look, you got something in this money bill, your money or your principles. Will you stand up for network neutrality? And so we are concerned that, you know, in that kind of horse trading, principles tend to get compromised away. So, and the chairman of the committee in the Senate, Senator Stevens, has said he's going to bring this up at lame duck. He's looking for the votes he needs to break any filibuster. And so the next few weeks is really important for those million people who are vigilant and stood up in the spring to keep an eye out, because we don't want a lame duck session to kill this most important principle of our society.
What makes you think people really care about this? Ordinary people.
This is not just an arcane telephone kind of issue. You know, when you talk about universal service, people will get lost in that. People really do have a gut instinct about the openness of our information system, right? And they really are concerned about media concentration. They're really concerned about telephone companies and cable companies which control the flow of programming into their houses. There's a rebellion about cable's control of those 500 channels. And so they really do care about it. And you don't need a lot of technical expertise to understand. This is a choice between who gets to decide what information you have access to. Will there be a gatekeeper? Will there be a toll booth? Or will there be a free flow of information?
But doesn't this come down to a wrestling match among some big guys? I mean, you're on the one side, the telephone and the cable companies that want to charge internet companies extra for higher speed access. On the other hand, giants like Yahoo and Google and Microsoft that want to outlaw those fees by mandating net neutrality. Isn't it going to be decided by which side gives the most money to Congress?
Well, it's, you know, the interesting thing is those big guys you talk about were little guys a few years ago. And that's the important point. Now, let me give you a historical example. When the internet first was rolling out to the public, the big guys didn't want to give away email. They wanted to charge for email as a separate service. The little guys at the time, the little internet service providers, there were 8,000 of them at one point. We're down to 2,000 now because they've been strangled by the network owners. The little guys said, hey, no, we're going to bundle in email. So we don't know who the little guys are, and we really have to worry about the little guys. Google, they may be a big company now. Who knows where the next big company is coming from? And we know that in the internet age, the big companies actually do have a real chance to start as little companies. But if you let the telephone companies and the cable companies set up this scheme where they're going to charge more to some people than others, you know who won't be able to pay the freight? The little guys, and will be killing the future of innovation. And so it's not just the big guys versus the little guys. For us, it's making sure that the little guys have a chance. It's not big guys versus big guys.
When all is said and done, isn't this going the way that television went and radio went and cable went, with big commercial interests deciding what is in the public interest?
Well, they have clearly lost control of speech on the internet, which is very, very different. If you look out at the internet, one estimate is that 60% of the content on the internet is produced by people, not corporations. You look at commercial TV, 0. Radio, 5%, talk radio. Newspapers, occasional op-ed maybe, or a letter to the editor. 99% of the content in those three traditional media are from corporations. The internet has turned that on its head. But it's not necessarily commercial. That's the important point. It's not clear what the commercial activity will be other than Google selling eyeballs, right? But it's democracy, right? And it's conversation. There's a conversation between people worldwide on the internet that did not exist 10 years ago.
And how can you take that away? Isn't there so much competition out there for news and information now that nobody can control it?
Well, if your video clips don't work, or your video clips can't reach lots of people, you will then be at a disadvantage. So they have put their thumb on that scale of democracy by discriminating against some people against other people, by giving their own services a better opportunity. And that will, in fact, undermine, slow down this democracy, this wonderful cacophony of voices we have. But all those voices are today equal in their opportunity to reach, equal in their opportunity to ship stuff around. If you put these toll booths on, that equality of opportunity goes away. And it matters in the long run.
So how does this issue of net neutrality fit into the big issue we've all been concerned about, of media conglomeration?
Well, I mean, let's separate the two aspects of the internet space. One is this non-commercial space, this public sphere, which has this roaring conversation among people, thousands and thousands of bloggers. We need to keep that as open as we possibly can. On the commercial side, it's not clear. I mean, if you think about the old world, the expression was, in a world of limited shelf space, placement was everything, right? If you needed to get in prime time, so placement is critical. In a world of infinite opportunity, turns out placement is awfully important, and maybe everything as well. Why? Because how are they going to find you? And so what we now have is we have the dominant companies who show their primetime shows, which get, 6, 10 million viewers on Sunday night. On Monday morning, they're available on their website. People know where to go for those clips, right, to watch those shows. And they're selling advertising again on those websites. So how the internet will change the commercial space, It's not clear. That is, it remains to be seen if people will come with business models that will break the hold.